Look, people often ask me how to retire comfortably. They show me their 401k statements and their financial advisor's projections. I look at the numbers and I tell them, your plan will fail. They get defensive. They think I'm being pessimistic. I'm not. I'm being arithmetic. I'm 99 years old. I've watched thousands of people retire over the past 60 years. I've seen the ones who made it and the ones who didn't. And I'm telling you, most retirement plans fail not because people don't save enough. They fail because people make 5 predictable mistakes that destroy decades of accumulation. This isn't theory. This is observation. I've watched it happen over and over. The math is simple. The execution is hard. And most people get it wrong. Hit the like button if you're ready to understand why most retirement plans fail and what to do instead. I only share this with people who are serious about not working until they die. Before we get into this, do me a favor. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know who's here. City, state, country. Just let me know. Here's why smart people's retirement plans fail. Most people think retirement is about accumulating a number, $1 million to $2 million, whatever the financial magazines say you need. That's backward. Retirement isn't about hitting a number. It's about avoiding 5 mistakes that destroy wealth faster than you can accumulate it. You don't need to be brilliant. You don't need to pick perfect investments. You just need to avoid being stupid in 5 specific ways. If you're looking for a shortcut to early retirement, you'll likely find yourself working at 75. I'll show you the 5 reasons retirement plans fail and what to do instead. Rules that anyone can follow, but most won't. The first rule is the hardest because it requires you to do math that makes you uncomfortable. Let's start. Rule number 1. You're underestimating how long you'll live. The first reason retirement plans fail, people plan to die at 85. They live to 95. That sounds obvious, but nobody plans for it. They save enough for 20 years of retirement and run out of money in year 23. Then they're 88 years old, broke, and too old to work. Here's the problem. Life expectancy keeps increasing. In 1950, the average American lived to 68. Today, it's 79. If you're healthy and make it to 65, you'll likely live to 85. If you make it to 85, you'll likely live to 92. The numbers keep extending, but here's the bigger problem. People plan for average, not reality. They see life expectancy 79, and they save for 14 years of retirement if they retire at 65. That's insane. Half of people live longer than average. That's what average means. Let me tell you about a surgeon I knew in Boston. Brilliant man. Saved his entire career. Retired at 65 in 1998. Had $1.8 million saved. His financial advisor ran the numbers. If you live to 85 and earn 6% returns, you can spend $110,000 a year. Perfect. He felt set at 65. He was healthy. Played golf 3 times a week. Traveled to Europe twice a year. Spent his $110,000 every year without worry. At 75, still healthy. Still playing golf. Still spending. At 85, the advisor's plan said he'd die. He didn't die. He was still healthy, still spending $110,000 a year. At 87, he had $340,000 left. At 89, $180,000. At 91, $40,000. At 92, he was on Social Security alone, $20,800 a month. He lived in a studio apartment. This was a man who'd been a cardiac surgeon for 35 years. He died at 94, broke, because he planned to die at 85. He spent his last 2 years eating at soup kitchens. A surgeon. Because he underestimated longevity. That's the trap. The arithmetic is brutal. $1.8 million earning 6% with $110,000 annual withdrawals lasts 23 years if returns are steady. But he lived 29 years after retirement. Those extra 6 years, from 88 to 94, he had no money. His mistake wasn't saving too little. His mistake was planning to die on schedule. Now compare that to a teacher I knew in Nebraska. She retired at 65 in 1995 with $800,000, much less than the surgeon. Her advisor said, "You can spend $48,000 a year if you live to 85. She said, "What if I live to 95? He recalculated, "Then you can spend $38,000 a year." She chose $38,000. It felt tight. Her friends were spending $55,000, $65,000 a year, traveling more, living larger, in their 60s and 70s. She looked poor compared to them. They pitied her. She kept her spending at $38,000. At 85, she was still healthy. Her friends who'd spent $65,000 a year were running out of money. They stopped traveling, sold their vacation homes, started worrying. At 90, they were cutting back drastically, shopping at discount stores, skipping medications to save money. At 92, some were moving in with their kids. She still had $420,000 and was still spending $38,000 a year comfortably. She died at 96 with $180,000 left. Gave it to her grandchildren. She planned for longevity. Her friends planned for averages. She died comfortable. They died broke. Here's what destroys most retirement plans. If you retire at 65 with $1 million and spend $65,000 a year, that's a 6.5% withdrawal rate. You're broke by 83. If you live to 93, you're broke for 10 years. If you retire at 65 with $1 million and spend $40,000 a year, 4% withdrawal rate, you can last until 95, even with market downturns. Most people cannot accept this. They want to spend more in their 60s when they're healthy. They want to enjoy their retirement years. So they spend 6-7% annually and run out at 82. Then they spend the last decade of their life poor. I'll tell you something that nobody talks about. The people who run out of money at 85 don't just become poor. They become burdens. Their kids have to support them. Their kids' retirement plans get destroyed trying to support parents who spent too much in their 60s. I watched this happen to my own law partner. His father retired wealthy in 1985. Spent lavishly for 13 years, traveled constantly, expensive restaurants 4 nights a week, country club memberships, 2 vacation homes. By 1998, at age 81, he was broke. My partner, who should have been saving for his own retirement, was sending his father $3,000 a month for 12 years until the father died at 93. That's $432,000 my partner spent supporting his father instead of building his own retirement. But money wasn't even the worst part. My partner had to cancel his daughter's study abroad program because he couldn't afford it. He was supporting his father. He postponed his own retirement twice. His marriage was strained because his wife resented supporting his father. Now my partner is 68 and still working because he doesn't have enough saved. His father's overspending in his 60s destroyed 2 generations of retirement security. And now his own children are watching, worried they'll have to support him the same way. This is a cascading failure nobody talks about. One generation's overconfidence creates a burden that ripples down for decades. Before you retire, run your numbers for living to 95, not 85. That extra decade will either bankrupt you or you'll be fine. Your choice. But even if you plan for longevity, you can destroy everything with one thing. Pareto. Rule number 2. Healthcare costs will destroy you. Once you plan for longevity, you need to plan for what makes longevity expensive. Healthcare. Here's the second problem. People budget for healthcare based on what they pay today. They're 60, spending $800 a month on premiums and $2,000 a year out of pocket. They think healthcare costs $12,000 a year. Then they turn 70, develop chronic conditions, and healthcare costs $45,000 a year. Nobody sees it coming. Let me tell you about a CFO I knew, corporate executive, retired at 62 in 2010 with $2.3 million, very healthy, ran marathons, never smoked, never drank, perfect blood pressure. His retirement plan budgeted $15,000 a year for health care. Medicare would cover most of it at 65, and he had great supplemental insurance. At 65, still healthy. Health care cost $18,000 a year, a bit more than planned, but manageable. At 68, he developed diabetes, manageable, but medications cost $8,000 a year after insurance. Health care costs $26,000 annually. At 72, he had a heart attack, survived. But now he's on multiple medications, seeing specialists quarterly, having tests twice a year. Health care costs $38,000 annually. At 76, he developed Parkinson's, needs physical therapy 3 times a week, occupational therapy twice a week, neurologist visits every 2 months, brain scans, medication adjustments. Health care costs $52,000 annually. At 80, he needs part-time help at home. Can't dress himself some mornings. Can't cook safely. $3,000 a month for an aide, 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. Health care and care costs $88,000 annually. At 84, he needs full-time care. Memory issues, fall risk. Moves to assisted living, $7,500 a month base cost, plus medical care, medication management, physical therapy. Total, $128,000 annually. He died at 87. His last 3 years cost $380,000. His retirement plan had budgeted $15,000 per year for 25 years, $375,000 total for his entire retirement. He spent that much in 3 years at the end. By the time he died, his $2.3 million was down to $180,000. His wife had $180,000 to live on for the rest of her life. She died 8 years later, broke, living with their daughter. He had almost nothing because health care costs exploded in his 70s and 80s. That's the trap. Here's the arithmetic nobody wants to face. Health care costs in retirement average $315,000 per person over their lifetime, according to Fidelity. That's average. If you develop chronic conditions, diabetes, heart disease, Parkinson's, dementia, you can spend $500,000 to $1 million. Most people budget $200,000. They're short by $300,000 to $800,000. And here's what nobody tells you. Medicare doesn't cover everything. You think you'll be safe at 65 because of Medicare. You're not. Medicare covers 80% of Part B costs. You pay 20%. Sounds manageable until you need $200,000 in care. Then your 20% is $40,000. Medicare doesn't cover long-term care. Nursing homes cost $8,000 to $15,000 per month. Assisted living costs $5,000 to $10,000 per month. Medicare pays zero. If you need 3 years of care at $8,000 per month, that's $288,000 out of pocket. Compare that to a woman I knew who worked at an insurance company. She saw the health care cost data every day. She processed the claims. She saw what people actually spent in their 80s. When she retired at 64 in 2005 with $1.1 million, she did something different. She budgeted $25,000 a year for health care from 64 to 70, then $40,000 a year from 70 to 80, then $70,000 a year from 80 to 90. Her friends thought she was insane. You're healthy. Why budget $70,000 a year for health care at 80? She said, because that's what the data shows people actually spend. I see the bills every day. She adjusted her lifestyle to accommodate, lived modestly, drove a 12-year-old Honda, no expensive vacations, cooked at home. Her friends were living larger, designer clothes, new cars every 3 years, cruises twice a year, But she kept her health care buffer. At 75, she developed arthritis, needed knee replacement, surgery, rehab, ongoing physical therapy. Costs were high, but within budget. At 80, she had a stroke, needed intensive rehab, speech therapy, ongoing occupational therapy. Expensive, but within budget. At 85, she moved to assisted living, $6,000 a month. Within budget. She died at 89. She'd spent $1.8 million total over 25 years of retirement. $600,000 of that was health care and assisted living. Her friends who budgeted $15,000 a year were broke by 82. She made it comfortably because she budgeted for reality, not hope. The arithmetic is simple. If you retire at 65 with $1 million and budget $15,000 annually for health care, you're assuming $375,000 over 25 years. Reality is $400,000 to $700,000. You're short. If you budget $30,000 annually for health care, escalating to $60,000 after 80, you will be close to reality. Most people cannot accept this. They don't want to sacrifice lifestyle today to prepare for health care costs in 20 years. So they live large in their 60s and run out of money in their 80s when they need it most. Before you retire, look at actual healthcare cost data for people in their 80s. Call some assisted living facilities. Ask what they cost. Call some home health agencies. Ask what full-time care costs. Budget for that, not for what you spend today. But even with longevity planning and healthcare buffers, you can still fail with one decision. Tamir, rule number 3, your withdrawal rate will kill you. Once you've planned for longevity and healthcare, you need to get the withdrawal rate right. Most people don't. Here's the third problem. People think they can withdraw 7 or 8% of their portfolio annually and be fine. The financial advisor shows them projections assuming 8% returns, so they figure 7% withdrawals leave 1% for growth. The math looks fine on paper. In reality, it's suicide. Let me tell you about an engineer I knew. Retired in 1999 with $1.5 million at age 63. Smart guy. Ran his own calculations. I'll withdraw $105,000 a year. That's 7%. The market averages 10% historically, so I'll actually grow my wealth in retirement. Made perfect sense. Year 1, 1999, market up 20%. Portfolio grew to $1.7 million even after his $105,000 withdrawal. He felt brilliant. Told everyone at his retirement party he'd cracked the code. Year 2, 2000, market down 9%. Withdrew $105,000. Portfolio now $1.45 million. Still okay. Not worried yet. Year 3, 2001, market down 12%. Withdrew $105,000. Portfolio $1.17 million. Starting to worry. Then 2002, market down 22%. Withdrew $105,000. Portfolio $810,000. In 4 years, he'd gone from $1.5 million to $810,000, despite the market averaging positive returns over longer periods. He was 67 years old and had just lost 46% of his retirement savings. By 2008, after the financial crisis, his portfolio was at $520,000. He was 72 years old. At his 7% withdrawal rate, he'd be broke by 78. He had to cut his spending from $105,000 to $35,000 a year, from comfortable to barely surviving. He stopped going out to dinner, stopped seeing friends because he couldn't afford to split restaurant bills. His wife was humiliated. They'd been the successful couple. Now they were shopping at Goodwill. He died at 89, having lived 17 years on $35,000 a year. Stressed about money constantly. Every medical bill was a crisis. Every car repair was a disaster. He spent nearly 2 decades of retirement poor because his withdrawal rate was too high. That's the trap. The arithmetic is devastating. A 7% withdrawal rate in a flat market depletes your portfolio in 14 years. A 7% withdrawal rate during a bear market in your first 5 years of retirement, what they call sequence of returns risk can deplete your portfolio in 12 years. You retire at 65, you're broke at 77. Compare that to a postal worker I knew, retired at 66 in 2005 with $900,000, much less than the engineer. His advisor said, use the 4% rule, withdraw $36,000 a year, adjusted for inflation. He said, that's barely enough to live on. The advisor said, then you can't afford to retire yet. That hurt. He wanted to retire. His back hurt from carrying mail for 35 years. But he waited, worked 2 more years, saved more, retired at 68 with $1.05 million, started withdrawing 4%, $42,000 annually, lived modestly, drove a 10-year-old car, shopped at Costco, watched Netflix instead of going to movies. His friends were withdrawing 7 to 8% and living better. They pitied him. The 2008 crash came. His portfolio dropped to $720,000. Painful to watch. But his $42,000 withdrawal was still only 5.8% of his portfolio. Sustainable. He didn't panic. He didn't sell. He kept withdrawing his $42,000, adjusted for inflation. By 2015, his portfolio had recovered to $1.1 million. His withdrawal was now 3.6% of the portfolio. He actually increased his spending to $48,000 a year. By 2020, his portfolio was at $1.3 million. He died at 91 with $840,000 still in his portfolio, lived 23 years in retirement comfortably on 4% withdrawals. The engineer lived 26 years in retirement, 17 of them stressed and poor because he used 7% withdrawals. The arithmetic is simple. The 4% rule: withdraw 4% of your starting balance, adjusted annually for inflation, has a 95% success rate over 30 years, according to the Trinity study. A 5% withdrawal rate has a 75% success rate. A 7% withdrawal rate has a 35% success rate. 2/3 of people using 7% withdrawals run out of money. Most people cannot accept this. 4% feels like too little. If you have $1 million, 4% is only $40,000 a year. They want more. So they use 6 to 7% and gamble that markets will bail them out. Sometimes it works. Usually it doesn't. Before you retire, calculate your expenses. Then multiply by 25. That's how much you need saved to use the 4% rule. If you need $60,000 a year, you need $1.5 million. If you only have $900,000, you can't afford $60,000 annually. You can afford $36,000. Accept that or keep working. But even with the right withdrawal rate, you can destroy everything with bad timing. Rule number 4. You'll retire at the worst possible time. Once you have the right withdrawal rate, you face a problem you cannot control. When you retire matters more than how much you saved. Here's the 4th problem. People retire when they hit a certain age or savings target. They don't consider market valuations. They retire into expensive markets and get destroyed. They have no control over this timing, but it determines everything. Let me tell you about 2 teachers. Both taught in California. Both saved diligently for 35 years. Both retired with exactly $1.2 million. Teacher 1 retired in 1999 at age 64. Market was at all-time highs. S&P 500 was at 1,400. Tech stocks were soaring. Everyone was getting rich. She felt smart retiring at the peak. She started withdrawing $48,000 annually. Perfect 4% rule. Year 1, fine. Then 2002 happened. 3 straight years of market losses. Her portfolio dropped to $880,000 by 2003. She kept withdrawing $48,000 adjusted for inflation, now $51,000. Her withdrawal rate was now 5.8% of her remaining portfolio. By 2008, after another crash, her portfolio was at $620,000. Her withdrawal, adjusted for inflation, was $58,000, 9.4% of her portfolio, unsustainable. At 73, she had to drastically cut spending, move to a smaller apartment. stopped traveling, stopped seeing her grandchildren across the country because she couldn't afford flights, cut her budget to $35,000 a year. She died at 88 with $180,000 left. She'd saved $1.2 million and lived 24 years in retirement stressed about money, all because she retired at a market peak. Teacher 2 retired in 2009 at age 64. Same $1.2 million saved. Market had just crashed. S&P 500 was at 800. Everyone was terrified. Her friends told her she was crazy to retire. Wait until the market recovers, they said. She retired anyway. Started withdrawing $48,000 annually, 4% rule. Then the market recovered and recovered and recovered. By 2015, her portfolio was at $1.6 million. Despite 6 years of withdrawals, her withdrawal rate was now 3.2% of her portfolio. By 2020, her portfolio was at $2.1 million. By 2024, at age 79, she had $2.4 million despite 15 years of withdrawals. She could increase her spending, but she kept it steady. She'll die with over $2 million remaining because she retired at a market bottom. Same savings, same withdrawal rate, same strategy. Teacher 1 retired at the peak and struggled. Teacher 2 retired at the bottom and thrived. The difference wasn't their behavior. It was luck of timing. This is the cruelest part of retirement planning. You can do everything right and still fail if you retire at the wrong time. The arithmetic is unforgiving. If you retire with $1 million when the market P/E ratio is 35, like in 1999, your expected returns are 3 or 4% annually. With 4% withdrawals plus inflation, you're likely to deplete your portfolio. If you retire when the P/E ratio is 15, like in 2009, your expected returns are 8 to 10% annually. With 4% withdrawals, your portfolio grows. Most people don't understand this. They hit 65, they retire regardless of market conditions. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it destroys them. Compare this to a man I knew who had flexibility. He was planning to retire at 65 in 2006 with $1.4 million. Then he looked at market valuations. S&P was at 1,400. P/E ratios were elevated. Real estate was at all-time highs. Everything was expensive. He didn't retire. He kept working. His friends thought he was stupid. You have enough. Retire and enjoy life, they said. He kept working. 2008 happened. Market crashed. His portfolio dropped to $980,000, but he was still working, still contributing $15,000 a year. By 2010, his portfolio was back to $1.3 million because he'd kept adding money during the crash. He retired in 2011 at age 70 with $1.5 million. Market was fairly valued. He started his 4% withdrawals, $60,000 annually. By 2020, his portfolio was at $2.2 million despite 9 years of withdrawals. By waiting 5 years and retiring after a crash instead of before it, he turned potential failure into success. Most people cannot do this. They don't have the flexibility to delay retirement. They don't have jobs that let them work into their 70s. So they retire when they hit their target number, regardless of market conditions, and hope for the best. If you have flexibility, watch market valuations before you retire. If stocks are at all-time highs and P/E ratios are in the top 20% historically, consider working another year or two. If you have no flexibility, lower your withdrawal rate to 3 to 3.5% if retiring into expensive markets. But even if you time everything perfectly, one final mistake destroys more retirees than all the others combined. Rule number 5, you'll help your kids and ruin yourself. Once you've done everything right, planned for longevity, budgeted for health care, used the right withdrawal rate, retired at a decent time, you'll be tempted to help your kids. That's what destroys most retirement plans. Here's the 5th problem, and it's the biggest. Parents cannot watch their children struggle. Kid needs $40,000 for a down payment. Parents give it. Kid loses their job. Parents help with expenses. Grandkids need college tuition. Grandparents pay. Each decision makes sense in isolation. Together, they bankrupt the parents. Let me tell you about a couple in New Jersey, retired in 2010 at ages 65 and 63 with $1.8 million combined, comfortable. They budgeted $72,000 a year in spending, 4% rule, perfect plan. Everything was fine. Year 3 of retirement, their daughter lost her job. Single mom, 2 kids, struggling to pay rent, struggling to feed her kids. The parents gave her $30,000 to cover 6 months of expenses. Made sense. Family helps family. Year 5, their son's business failed. Restaurant didn't make it. He needed $50,000 to avoid bankruptcy and losing his house. They gave it to him. What else could they do? Watch their son lose everything? Year 7, granddaughter going to college. Smart kid. Good grades. Got into a good school, but no scholarships. Parents wanted to help. $25,000 per year for 4 years. That's what grandparents do. By year 10 of retirement, they'd given away $230,000 to help their kids. Their portfolio, which should have been around $1.9 million with growth, was at $1.3 million. Their 4% rule withdrawal of $72,000 was now 5.5% of their remaining portfolio. By age 80, after helping kids with another $120,000 over the years, emergency here, car repair there, medical bill there, they had $680,000 left. Their withdrawal rate was now 10.6%. Unsustainable. At 82, they had to sell their house and move in with their daughter. The same daughter they'd given $30,000 to 15 years earlier. They had nothing. They spent their last years sleeping in their daughter's basement. No independence, no dignity, because they couldn't watch their children struggle. That's the trap. The arithmetic is brutal. $1.8 million at 4% withdrawals lasts 30-plus years. $1.8 million minus $350,000 in gifts to kids. Continuing with 4% withdrawals of the original $72,000 lasts 18 years. You retire at 65, you're broke at 83 instead of having money until 95. Compare that to a couple in Arizona, same situation. Retired in 2008 with $1.6 million, their son asked for $60,000 to start a business in 2012. They said no. Hard conversation. The son was angry. You have $1.6 million and you won't give me $60,000? What kind of parents are you? He didn't talk to them for a year. Their daughter asked for help with a down payment in 2015, $45,000. They said no. Another hard conversation. Daughter felt hurt. Cried, "You have so much money and won't help us? We're your children." Grandkids needed college money. They offered to help with $5,000 per year per grandkid. What they could afford without impacting their retirement. Not full tuition, not room and board, just $5,000 a year. The kids figured out the rest with loans and scholarships. Their children thought they were selfish, cheap, cold. By 2024, at ages 81 and 79, they still have $1.9 million. They've lived comfortably for 16 years. They'll have money until they die. They still see their kids. The relationship's healed. They're kids. They figured it out. The son's business failed, but he got another job. Works in sales now. Makes good money. The daughter saved up and bought a smaller house. The grandkids graduated with some debt, but are working, paying it off. The New Jersey couple helped their kids and ruined themselves. The Arizona couple said no and stayed secure. Both sets of kids are fine today. One set of parents is broke. One set is comfortable. The arithmetic is simple but painful. Every $50,000 you give to your kids in retirement is $50,000 less in your portfolio. At 4% withdrawals, That's $2,000 less you can spend annually for the rest of your life. Give away $200,000 to help kids. You've reduced your annual retirement income by $8,000 forever. Most people cannot absorb that. Most people cannot say no to their children. They feel guilty. They feel like bad parents. So they help, and they destroy their own retirement security. Then at 85, they're the burden on their children they were trying to prevent. Now here's the controversial truth that will make some of you angry. Helping your adult children financially often makes them weaker, not stronger. I've watched this for 60 years. The kids who got the most help from parents often achieved the least. The kids who got nothing often achieved the most. Your daughter needs $45,000 for a down payment. If you give it to her, she learns that bailouts exist. 5 years later, she's back asking for $30,000 because she's overextended. If you don't give it to her, she buys a smaller house, lives within her means, and builds discipline that serves her for life. Your son's business fails, and he needs $60,000. If you give it to him, he doesn't fully process why the business failed. He doesn't learn the hard lessons. His next venture likely fails too because he didn't pay the tuition the first failure was supposed to teach. If you don't give it to him, he's forced to face reality, learn from mistakes, and come back stronger. I know this sounds harsh, but I've seen both outcomes hundreds of times. The parents who helped destroyed their kids' initiative. The parents who said no forced their kids to develop resilience. I learned this from watching my own family. My grandfather had 7 children. He worked hard, saved diligently. When he retired in 1960, he had $180,000, a fortune at the time. Over the next 20 years, 6 of his 7 children asked him for money at various points. He gave it to them, every time. By 1980, at age 85, he had $12,000 left, and his Social Security. He lived with my parents for his last 7 years. He'd helped every child who asked. In return, he had no independence at the end of his life. But here's what's worse. Of those 6 children he helped, 5 never became financially independent. They kept needing help. They kept making bad decisions because they knew Dad would bail them out. The one child he never helped, my mother, became the most successful of all 7. She had no choice but to figure it out. My mother remembered this. She told me, "Your grandfather loved us so much, he bankrupted himself for us. Don't do that. And worse, he made us weak by always rescuing us." Let me make this simple. Here are the 5 reasons retirement plans fail. Rule 1, underestimating longevity. Plan to live to 95, not 85. Those extra 10 years will either bankrupt you or you'll be fine. Rule 2, healthcare costs explode. Budget $400,000 to $700,000 for healthcare over retirement, not $200,000. Reality is expensive. Rule 3, withdrawal rates too high. Use 4%, not 7%. 2/3 of people using 7% run out of money. Rule 4, retiring at market peaks. You can't always control this, but if you can delay retirement during expensive markets, do it. Rule 5, helping your kids. Every dollar you give them is a dollar you cannot spend for the rest of your life. Most people bankrupt themselves helping children who would have figured it out anyway. These are not complicated rules. But almost nobody follows all 5 because each one requires sacrifice today for security later. Most people cannot do that. Here's your challenge. Run your retirement numbers again. Assume you live to 95. Budget $600,000 for health care. Use 4% withdrawal rate. Check market valuations. And decide right now, will you help your kids financially in retirement? If yes, budget for it. If no, practice saying no now. I'm 99 years old. I have maybe a year left, maybe less. I'm telling you this because I've watched hundreds of people retire over 60 years. The ones who made it followed these 5 rules. The ones who failed violated at least one. Usually they violated 3 or 4. Your retirement plan will probably fail, not because you're stupid, because these rules require discipline most people don't have. You want to spend more than 4%. You don't want to budget for getting sick in your 80s. You can't say no to your kids, I understand. But understanding doesn't change the arithmetic. The math doesn't care about your feelings. Either you follow these rules, or you work until you die, or you run out of money at 83 and become a burden on your children. That's it. Those are your 3 options. Choose. Now, if you want more brutal honesty about retirement, timeless principles that actually work instead of financial advisor fantasies, subscribe to this channel. We don't promise easy. We don't promise fast. We promise truth.